What's blocking your next right action? This question came up several times in coaching calls I had this week, and I thought it'd be helpful for you to hear. Often when I work with business leaders, their problem isn't knowing what to do. They've known what to do maybe for a little while, but they notice that they continue to not take the right action. So today we're going to discuss three different coaching calls that I had this last week, and how this question helped unlock really bold action for these business owners. My name is Josh Friberg, and I am a one-on-one business coach for small business owners who want to be more productive at work, but also want to be more present at home. And we do this by really figuring out how to do not just work-life like balance or balancing, but honestly how to do like how to integrate work and life. So what came up this week? I had three different coaching clients who during the course of our calls, they said, I know what the next right action is, but I'm not taking it. And I asked this very simple question. I said, what do you think it is that's blocking you from taking your next right action? And this is where I want to pause for a second and just say what I consider to be the real clear distinction between like coaching when it comes to business coaching and consulting. And I think what a lot of people get confused is they think of coaching sort of like a high school football coach or something, where they're actually teaching the skills or telling the players what to do. But when you start looking at coaching at professional levels, these professionals already know what to do. They need someone who can be an outside perspective, can say, hey, I'm seeing something you're not seeing, and can help the player become really, really focused. So when a business owner, business leader doesn't know what to do, this might be a place for a consultant. But oftentimes, these business owners, they know what to do. They're just struggling with actually taking the next steps. And that's where coaching is really valuable. Coaching's all about helping the client be the best version of themselves. So this week I had one client who had kind of one of the first problems that often shows up in blocking the next right action was he knows, and he's known for a while, that his business does need some social media presence. Now, he's not looking to become like an influencer or anything like that, but he does realize that before people hire him, they're checking social media to see if he's current, to see if he's legit, to see if he's like, a thought leader in the space. And so he wanted to have a real simple social media presence. And by the way, like he is constantly in the way of really great content throughout the course of his days. He's super knowledgeable in his space. And so I'm like, what do you think is blocking you from taking this action you know you need to take, which is very simple, just create like 3 short videos a week. And he said, the biggest challenge I have, he goes, is there's just no reward for it. Yeah, I might get a few likes, I might get a couple comments, but honestly, I feel like I'm just sort of throwing stuff out into the void and I don't get a reward back. I don't get a reward back. So what we talked about, and I think this is really important, and we borrowed a little bit from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, where he talks about if you want to create a new habit, right, to like make it attractive, but also make it rewarding. Like find a way to create a little bit of a reward cycle, even if it's an artificial one, because it can motivate us to take the action we know we need to take. What was interesting, I checked back in with him a week later. He'd made the 3 videos, and there were a few, there was a little bit of interaction with it. But more importantly, he said, and he's a big runner, he said, this feels like the early steps of training cardio, of getting back into running. He goes, the progress is kind of slow to show up. And I thought, what a perfect metaphor for this, because often the next right action we're going to take is not going to be that big explosive thing that makes a world of difference, but it's committing to an action that we're going to need to take consistently, right? And at the end of the day, consistency beats intensity in business. And so he is learning that by building a small reward system for himself so that he like feels good about doing it. He's got these, 3 videos that he posts each week. He makes sure and sends them to a few people he knows so that they can be like, hey, looks great, man. Oh, that's cool. Interesting. Just a little bit of social feedback for him. He knows that he's building that foundation the same way a runner will, that foundation of consistency so that, months from now, years from now, people who are, looking into his business, thinking of hiring him, they go, you know what? He's current, he's relevant, and he's got interesting things to say. I think I'd like to work with this guy. They get to know him before they meet him. And so what might be blocking your next action? Is it the fact that there's not an immediate reward for taking the action? Well, let's see if we can introduce a reward cycle for you that can help keep you on track toward building a new habit that's super important. The second client I had, and this is kind of a one that comes up every once in a while. The second client I had, I was talking to, and she's looking to make kind of a big shift in her business, like literally almost shift industries would be one way to say it. And I said, what is blocking you from taking the next right action? And she knew exactly what the action was that she needed to take. And she said, I think it's too big. Like that action feels too big. And she's the type of person who also feels like she has to build the entire thing before she launches it. In fact, she even said that. I'm like, what do you need to do next? And she goes, I need to launch this new program. And I was like, oh my gosh, that sounds terrible. That sounds overwhelming. She's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, launch. I mean, that sounds like a space shuttle launch. Like everything has to be perfect. It has to be lined up. It has to be quadruple tested before you even take the step of launching it. And I go, that sounds really big. It sounds like a lot of work without any feedback. And I don't know. And honestly, it sounds scary. I get why you're scared to take that action. She was like, oh, well, what do you suggest instead? And I go, well, first of all, I shared this ancient proverb with her, which goes like this. It's don't despise small beginnings. Don't despise small beginnings. Everything you do does have a small beginning. Even the big action you might take even has that small beginning of having the thought. And I said, what if we start smaller? I've heard somebody say before, if your first step is intimidating for you, if your first step is overwhelming to you, make your first step even smaller. Make your first step even smaller. And so for her, it became, and what she wanted to do was kind of have a class, a workshop type experience. And I said, why don't you just call like 10 people and tell them you want to do a quick beta test? You want to do this like 60-minute class with 10 friends and get their feedback. And she was like, oh, I could do that. Like immediately, I could do that. And that energy is going to get her started. And here's the important thing. When you don't despise small beginnings, when you take these steps, here's what happens. First of all, you learn so much. You learn so much about the action or the activity. You learn like how to, you learn what you didn't know, right? Because there's all these things you don't know what you don't know. You actually learn what you don't know. I had a good friend share that with me when I got into archery elk hunting, when I got into bow hunting. And I was like everybody, I want to get a big bull and I want to do all this. And he goes, Josh, I think what you need to do is you need to like give yourself an opportunity. Go find the hunt where you're going to have the highest likelihood of success. In my case, it was a cow hunt in an area that I knew really well. And he goes, you will learn more from getting like your first animal than you will from 10 years of hunting and not getting anything. And in fact, he was right. I mean, I learned so much in that like sort of like 90 seconds right around taking a shot than I learned in years and years of hunting previously where I didn't get a shot. When you take action, in your business, you need to start this marketing campaign. You need to start interviewing to hire someone new. You need to change a system within how your team functions, right? You need to introduce weekly meetings for your team, whatever that is. Start small and get into action right away. You will learn so much. The other thing is, and this is super important, particularly if we're trying to take something to market, is we often like try and come up with the perfect plan for what we're going to take to market, and only to, in all likelihood, have it not go very well, have it fail. Rather than getting something to market to test the market and find out how the market responds. right? This is the idea that you hear in the tech world a lot of like minimum viable product. How can we get something out there to get feedback from the marketplace to see if it's even something that the marketplace wants, right? So if you're a business owner, you're a business leader, and you know there's a next right action to take, but it feels big and overwhelming, let's make it a little bit smaller if that's what's blocking your next action. Now, I've talked about this before, and I think it's so important. This third experience I had coaching this week really speaks to this, which is this person has completed a book and is right at the edge of releasing it and is a little apprehensive to do that. In fact, she's been doing a little bit of, if I could just be honest, like some self-sabotage to keep it from happening. And we talked about that, and as we talked more and more about it, she was like, I'm so nervous because this is so important to me. And what we identified is that like her identity is so closely tied to this book doing well that she's nervous about like negative feedback she might get, that she's nervous that people are going to say, hey, you overstated this, or you didn't cite your sources correctly, or things like that. Her identity is very, very closely tied in to the success of this next action. And this is where it's really important for us when we talk about, really good business coaching. I think so much of it focuses on the outward actions, and that's good as a starting place, but it doesn't always do the work, doesn't do the inner work, the inner examination of like, how is my ego connected to this? How is my identity connected to this? And am I holding back because it feels so risky, because it feels so vulnerable to take my next action? And after we talked about it a little bit, we realized like a way of reframing how she thinks about her identity so that she could take that next important action of getting this book to market. If you're a small business owner, this challenge, right? This challenge of one, there's so many options. I mean, one of the challenges of life is that it's self-assignment, right? And if you're a small business owner, it's even more so, right? There's no boss telling you what to do. You got to figure it out day in and day out. And this is where like I have such joy in helping my coaching clients, because after asking them 3 or 4 or 5 questions, they can usually identify what the next right action is, right? Is that after they consider the options, after they do a little bit of, comparing which one might be most effective, they almost always know what to do. They know the next right action. But if there's no reward to that action, or the action feels too big or overwhelming, or if their identity is too wrapped up in it, they fail to take that next step. And so when we're able to identify those blockages, we can remove those. We can, by the way, more often than not, recognize them for what they are, which is that they're stories, that they're falsehoods that we are believing. And when they can get past that, it allows them to take really bold action. And of course, within the accountability that we have, great, go take that action. Let's see what happens next. Small, medium, or big, take the action and let's see. And then they can come back and say, this is what happened. This is what I learned. And by the way, if there was some untruth that was blocking them, right? Like their identity, like it being too big, like, the fact that there isn't an intrinsic reward, but maybe we can create one. Or an extrinsic reward, but maybe there's an intrinsic one that we can find. They're able to take even greater action. And what's cool is it allows them to get to higher levels of productivity. When they get home, it allows them to be way more present. And this, I think, is one of the big powers of a great coaching relationship that asks those terrific questions. Hey, if you like content like this that can help you be more productive in your work and more present at home, we'd love for you to take a second to subscribe and check out some of the other videos that we have, helping you really be a better version of yourself as a business owner. Thanks so much for watching.